Hey, what's going on, Cashflow Hacker? It is Chris with Life 180, and I'm excited to bring this presentation to you. I'm putting this video together to help you through the process to really walk through everything that you need to know to understand infinite banking, life insurance as an asset, and all this stuff on a greater, deeper level so you can come to a more educated decision in your process, whatever that looks like to you. The big thing for me is I had an experience through all the education and everything that I was doing that ultimately led me down a process of believing what I believe. And I truly believe that if everybody knew what I know, people would be doing what I talk about, what I kind of coach people to. And so the whole purpose of this video is trying to take most of the stuff that I've learned, all the most important stuff, and compress it into this video in this maybe 1 hour time frame to be able to help you understand the most important components of personal finance, of the economy, of investing, of how money works in a way, and get you to think about it in a little bit of a different way that's going to help you understand why I love what we do so much. So let's get into this. You can see, I want to guess, if you don't know who I am, I don't know, maybe you're a subscriber to the channel, maybe you're not. But a little background on me. Like I said, I'm the owner and founder of Life 180. I'm married. I think probably my greatest achievement of all time is I'm married to Mrs. America 2021. I totally outkicked my coverage there, but we got 3 beautiful kids. It's fantastic. I'm the former business director of business development for a Fortune 1000 life insurance company, the #1 index universal life insurance company in the country. So if that is something that is appealing to you, my experience there really shaped my beliefs and views on how all this stuff works. So I think that's really important. I have a top YouTube channel. I think one of the things that I'm most proud about is our content on YouTube and the value, the free value that we put out into the industry for both agents and consumers that are looking to utilize this strategy for themselves. I'm a real estate investor. You saw the cover of my book on the title page there, Cashflow Hacking. I've got another version of that book coming out that's expanding on the concepts and the ideas. And we are running a big life insurance agency at this point in time that is really not focused on selling products. It's focused on educating people. And I think by the time we get through this, you're going to see what I am talking about, because this is what I am passionate about. So here's what I'm going to cover in this. And this is really important to understand as I go through this. We're going to cover, first and foremost, the reasons that people will struggle with their money and why it's not their fault. Then we're going to cover banking principles. And then we're going to talk about how to create your own banking system and to create more abundance in your life. So when you look at this is where infinite banking comes into play. And there's a lot of misunderstandings about what infinite banking is. Now, here's the deal. I want to kind of get this off the table before we get going, because this is my driving force. And maybe it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me, is that I believe that we are all in business because we want to be solving problems. I don't look at myself as a life insurance guy. I look at myself as an entrepreneur. I look at myself as somebody, my only job is to help you solve problems. And I'm a huge believer that you have to believe so much in what you do that it would be a disservice to not share it with people. And I so emphatically believe that what we do can help people break through challenges. I talk about this a lot. I think there's 4 F's of money. I don't talk about it in depth of this presentation, but I call it faith, family, fitness, which is just health, and finances. And those 4 things, you cannot outsource the success of those things. And I'm not going to get into that in depth of this presentation, but I truly believe that what we do is help people have more success with their finances, which has a huge impact in their family, in their marriage, in their faith, in their health, because money trickles down into everything. And so once again, not going to go into that in crazy detail. But what I love is control and giving people the ability to take control of their lives and achieve predictable results. And I believe your money has to be in alignment with that. And so before we get into this, chances are, if you're watching this, you've heard of the term infinite banking. You probably questioned, like, what is infinite banking? You've heard a lot of people talk about it. Most of the time when people talk about infinite banking, what they're talking about is like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to get a life insurance policy, right? In order to do infinite banking, I need a properly designed whole life insurance policy. And listen, there's an element of that that's true, but the bottom line is life insurance is just a component of it. A properly designed whole life insurance policy is part of infinite banking, but infinite banking is not a product, it's a philosophy. Now, what you look at is inside of a whole life insurance policy, when it's designed properly, it's not just the policy itself, it's the attributes, it's the features inside of the policy, the benefits that that policy gives you that allow you to implement the philosophies that go with it. And that's where I'm going to get into this as we go. And I think this area is what a lot of people misunderstand, and that all the people that are utilizing Index Universal Life and pitching it as infinite banking, this is what they don't understand. They think about life insurance or like they think about infinite banking as arbitrage, and it stops there. It begins and ends there. Like, hey, if I can, earn 5% and borrow against my own money at 4%, that is infinite banking, and nothing could be further from the truth. It is so much more deep than that. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to get into this. This is going to be really, really fun for me because I spent a lot of time putting this together. I've done a lot of research, and one of the things that I know to be true is that people believe what they believe because typically we learn it from mentors, we learn it from our environment, we learn it from our parents, we learn it from our family. And I'm a big believer in asking why and going really, really deep. And in that process, what I've done is I kind of broke it up and I said, okay, why, if everybody does this a certain way, we go to school, we get a job, we're told to go to school to get a job, invest in a 401k, save 10% of our income, invest it into a retirement account, try to chase that rate of return, you're going to average 8% over the lifetime, right? That's what people are taught. Here's the deal. So what I did is I started saying, well, if that's the case, why is it not working? And what I did is, because I'm kind of a numbers guy, I kind of see life on a spreadsheet, right? And so what I did is I'm gonna go to my board here and I want to share this with you. So when it comes down to it, I look at the stock market, and now you can see here I've got the Dow Jones Industrial Average, Dow Jones Index, and what I've done is I've broken it up into 3 periods, okay? So when we look at 3 periods, the first period is 1929 to 1979. Now, once again, this is fascinating to me because of the fact that I don't look at this is just, I'll put it this way, it's not my opinion. This is just fact, this is math, this is history, this is actual results. And when I show you this, I think your mind is going to be blown, because mine was when I came to this discovery. So if you look at this from 1929 to 1979, the average rate of return was 4.42%, which is low. Think about that. That's the average rate of return for a 50-year period, right? So the actual rate of return is 2.04%. I'm going to explain that a little more later in about 4 slides or so. The inflation rate, look at this, was 2.98%. Look at this. The inflation rate was higher than the actual rate of return. So that means your purchasing power had a negative annualized return in the Dow Jones Industrial Average of negative 0.94%. Think about that. A negative annualized return for a 50-year period, right? That is a scary statistic. So then what do? We got through that. Remember, in 1980, Paul Volcker raised the federal funds rate to 19%. And we had the booming 80s, right? So we got the second period here from 1980 to 1999. This is a much different environment. This is, life was a lot different, right? So we had a 14.63% average rate of return. And notice that the annualized rate of return, the actual rate of return is 13.98. So there's not really as much of a difference there. But the inflation rate, as you remember, inflation was higher in the early 80s than, well, actually, I can't say it's higher than it is today because it's the highest it's been now since the early 80s. So we may be coming into more increased interest rate environments. I don't know how that's going to work, but we're going to get into like what I believe we need to do to prepare for that, right? So 4.28%, but you can see once again, this is the biggest thing I think it's important to understand here. I'm gonna reiterate this, is that it doesn't matter what the average rate of return or the real rate of return is. What matters is what's your purchasing power rate of return? Because we got to figure out what is the inflation rate, what is the actual rate of return, i.e. how much money do we have? But does it matter how much money you have, or does it matter what that money can buy you? So I would say it matters what that money can buy you. And so what we need to know is if that money is being devalued by inflation, we need to take the rate of return and minus it to get the actual purchasing power. So this is simply saying inflation here is simply saying this 4.28%, that's your break-even number. That means if the market didn't earn 4.28% on average over this period of time, you actually lost money. And that's what happened from 1929 to 1979. Now, 1980 to 1999, completely different scenario, obviously, right? Now, here's the deal. This is really important to understand. When we look at this, why do we do what we do today? I look at it and I go, okay, what do people do? I said people get 401ks, IRAs, we call them qualified plans, right? Qualified plans. There's Roths. So, but do you know that these were built in 1980? They started in 1980, right? And did you know Roths were 1990, I think 1997 or 1998 maybe? I can't remember. It's one of those two. But like, this is the history, right? So when we look at this, we're utilizing financial vehicles and tools that, by the way, are not reaching success. And I'm going to get into exactly the numbers on how abysmal the results are in the financial world right now. But we're utilizing these a financial system that is banked on this model of success and the market doing that. But I showed you here, and I'm going to go back to it. I showed you these numbers. This is 1929 to 79. And now when we go to 1980 to 1999, this is fantastic. I mean, this looks great. And this is what they kind of tell us that it will look like. But then we go 2000 to 2021, and this is the third period, right? Third period. And so when we look at this, it goes, okay, the average is 6.47. The actual is 5.37. Inflation is 2.24. Inflation is a little lower, under control. But when we minus out the inflation from the actual, we got our purchasing power. If we bought and hold and just put it in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, you got 3.13%. Once again, nobody's getting rich on that. And so when we look at this, we have 95% of the people in this country are not able to maintain their standard of living when they hit retirement. Why is that the case? It's because everybody's banking on this being the case. Everybody's banking on these numbers holding true, that over the long term, stocks and investments, the Dow Jones will average 7+% over time. Well, it gets worse than this, and I'm going to show you why, that even if the market outperforms what you're looking at, even if you invest in other things like the S&P, why it's not really that good. So to just kind of give you a summary, from the first period, negative 0.94%, this is a 50-year period. We got 20 years here, and we got 20 years here, ballpark, right? So out of this, we got 70 out of 90 years, right? So almost just about 80% of the time, just a little less than 80% of the time, that the market is not operating in an environment that is going to help everybody achieve the results that they're after. And once again, that was kind of a unicorn scenario. And so this is an image, and they say an image says 1,000 words. I'm going to tell you that an image here will say 1,000,000 words. And this is something that I came to the realization of. So let's hop in my DeLorean and go back to the future and go back to 1929. Let's imagine we start down here in 1929. And imagine in 1929 that we started, and I came back to you and we were friends, and I came up to you and I said, hey, listen, John, I just got back from the future. I had a time machine, and I looked, and I know that the market is going to average 7.1%. I know the market's going to average 7.1%. So if you took your $1,000 right here, the $1,000, and you invested, and you just bought and held, everybody just said, if all we have to do is buy and hold our investments, right? And if you just buy and hold, you're going to end up with $589,000, so almost $600,000, right? So if you just do that, you are going to be so set. Life is going to be amazing. Think of what you could do for your grandkids and all this stuff. Granted, it's a long time frame, but like the principle is the concept, because what do your typical money managers tell you to do? They tell you to buy, to hold, to ride it out. The market's going to go up, it's going to go down, but the bottom line is, if you just buy and hold and ride it out, as long as you don't sell when the market's down, you're going to average 7.1% or 8%, whatever the number is they give you. This is just showing the numbers of the Dow Jones Industrial Average has actually averaged 7.1%, which is what they tell you, which is why they say just buy and hold. But this is just saying, okay, that's misleading, because what happens? That works if you never have a down year, and if it's 7.1% every year. This is another reason I don't like IULs, because this is kind of how they illustrate, and it doesn't really work that way, right? And they show positive years every single year in the illustrations, and that's just not how they work. Now, here's what happens. This is actual performance. Actual performance, what takes into account. Remember, I went through and I said, what's the average rate of return for each time period? What's the actual rate of return? That is what comes into play when you talk about wins, losses, gains, losses every single year, because you see all these ups and downs throughout the period, right? So you can see here, instead of having 589, you actually, even though when you go back, the actual rate of return was only like 5 whatever percent, but when you break down, that's about 20% less than the 7.1. And when you compound that 20% less difference over, a 90-year period of time, those results add up when we're talking about compounding in a huge, 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 huge way. But here's where it gets worse. The average, check this out, average fees, if we bake in 1.5% managed money fees, including paying your money manager, including paying the mutual fund fees or anything of that nature, if we bake in those fees to everything, because remember, you pay those fees even on the down years, so it compounds your losses. You didn't walk away with 589, you walked away with only 31,000. However, here's where it gets worse. $1,000 back then, there's a little thing called inflation that we've been talking about. We talked about the purchasing power, like what do you need? That means that $1,000 had to be worth at least $15,825 just to keep the current value, or the value of the $1,000 when you first started. So that basically means you went from having $15,000 in today's value to $31,000. So you basically doubled your purchasing power in a 90-year period by buying and holding and just stuffing that $1,000 in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I don't know about you, that's kind of a disgusting number. Now, this is not my my opinion. This is history. This is math. Now, there's other things that you can do, like dollar cost averaging, and there are elements. I'm not blowing those things out of. You can do things to make this a little better. So I'm not trying to dispute that. So everybody who kind of feels that way, know that I agree with you. You can make these a little better by doing stuff like that. But the concept of the principle of buy and hold and how it works, how the growth of your money works, is absolutely essential to understand. And financial structure, financial design, if you want to be able to buy and hold, that means you need to be able to invest when times are down, when the market's struggling, right? On these down years after the market took a big dive, right? After it took a dive there, you can't even see it, but in these images down there, there's lots of dives that, had we gone back in history, they look much more drastic than they do on this big chart. So it's important to understand that. And when we look at this, the thing that I just want to implore you to understand is financial structure is the most important part. And that's where the banking concept comes into play. And that's why I hammer on it so much. Now let's talk about average versus actual. I think this is a concept that people absolutely need to understand. When I learned this, it kind of blew my mind a little bit. So here's the deal. Let's go here. I'm going to just change the color of my marker here. So let's go here. Year one. Okay. If I went to you and I said, all right, let's use this as an example. You got $1,000 and the market goes down 50%. You got a negative 50%. How much do you have? You got $500. Well, year two, the market makes a huge rebound. You got $500 now. It goes back up 100%. So what do you have now? You're back up to $1,000. So my question to you is, what's your average rate of return? Most people are going to look at that and say, well, I started with 1,000. I'm left with 1,000. So my average rate of return is 0. No, but that's not the case. That's your real rate of return. And this is the problem. People can market, financial advisors market average rate of return, right? When they need to be marketing the real or the actual rate of return. And so what's the average rate of return? Most people say here that it's 0 once again, but the bottom line is you got a plus 100 year, a negative 50 year. So what is that? That's 50 divided by 2 years. That's a 25% average rate of return. And so this is how you can see that, like, okay, average, this is where math and money are different, right? Like you can get a 25% average, but no extra money. That's a problem. Now let's take it to the next level. If we go year one, you have $1,000, you have a negative 10%, you're down to $900. The next year you have, that should say actually 900 plus 10%, you're at 990. Then the next year you're down 10%, that 990 goes down to 10, and so you're at 891. The next year you start with an 891, you're plus 10%, you're back up to 890. Now, the average rate of return, right, is 0 because you go down there and you say, okay, negative 10 plus 10, negative 10 plus 10, and that's fine. So I should be flat. Well, the real rate of return is negative 2% because you actually lost. So over time, this is where fees get into it, come into play, and they actually hurt your wealth potential. And when you have losses, that's the greatest threat of compounding your money. So the question is, where is all the money going? And this is just, once again, I'm just kind of summarizing this. I'm going to be really quick. The average of the Dow Jones since 1929, 7.1%. The real rate of return in that period of time is 5.29%. This is what I was saying a minute ago. That's 26% less than the 7.1%. And this 26% is the compounding fact that takes it from being the 589,000 all the way down to the 131, right? The 131,000. It's because of that compounding against you. Then we got average mutual fund fees of 1.1% according to Forbes.com. And then we have advisor fees on 1% on average according to Forbes. That's a 2.1% average. Now, the numbers that I gave you in my image there was based on 1.5%. This is 2.1% average, which is an atrocity because that is going to make your numbers look even worse than what I showed you, which are bad enough as it is. And, this just goes down to show and says, okay, if that's the case, what you're telling me is when you take inflation, expenses, and everything over the long period of time, my money's only averaged increasing by at a clip of 3.19% after inflation over that period of time. And the answer is an unequivocal yes, that is the case. And it's really disgusting. But the bottom line is it gets worse because taxes are not taken into consideration on this, in the conversation that we've had to this point in time. Now, the greatest killer of wealth, and I want to get into this, the greatest killer of wealth is interrupting compounded interest. And you do that through losses and you do it through taxes. So what we want to do, it all comes down to control, and it all comes down to you doing what's in your best interest. And so what I want to do is say, okay, for you to be able to operate in your best interest, you need to be implementing and thinking like the bank thinks, right? You got to be doing what the bank does. That's where the phrase infinite banking came out. Now, there's a lot of people that call it infinite banking, bank on yourself, cash flow banking. There's my buddy wrote the book, The And Asset. I call it cash flow hacking. You can see right here. I call everything I do cash flow hacking because I'm a big believer you need to invest for cash flow. And in order to do that, if you want to be a real good cash flow investor, you need to implement these principles and put yourself in the position of being the bank. That's it. It's really not complicated, and this shouldn't be complicated. So banking principles, I got 3 banking principles that you need to implement. Principle number 1, leverage and control. You want to use somebody else's money to build your wealth. That is a powerful thing, right? Number 2, velocity. The faster that you can get your money into movement, right? Deploy it into assets that are going to create cash flow, the greater you're going to be able to create wealth. Volume. This is a key thing. Volume is the name of the game. People are so concerned about earning money. Let's say you earn $100,000, taking a small percentage of your income, say 10%, and trying to take a lot of risk with that 10% to get big rewards. The one thing I learned a long time ago is if we can focus on being more efficient with our money and focusing on a bigger volume, we can get the same results or better results with less risk. So think about it this way. If I go and have $100,000 and I go, let's just do this here. If I have $100,000, right? And I take 10%, that's 10K, right? So if I want to go chase 10% returns on that 10K, what does that mean? I'm gonna have 11K at the end of the deal. That gets me $1,000 of returns, right? Because 11 minus 10, 10 plus 1 is 11. And so, that gets me that. But I have to take, because of this 10%, I'm chasing this risk. There's risk. So there's no guarantee I'm going to win. I could lose some or a significant portion or even all of my money in that situation. But what happens here is we have 90K left after this, right? After because we have, because we're delaying gratification on this 10 because we're investing it. I could then, if I just went and I found 1% inefficiencies in my life, I could go get that 1K on top of what I'm already saving, and I could get the same return with no risk. I could go try to find 2%, and I could double my return with no risk. If I could operate 5% more efficiently, and I promise if you're watching this video, chances are you operate at 5% inefficiency in your life on this 90K, whatever that number is in your life, but you understand what I'm talking about here. I guarantee if you have 5% of inefficiency, that's what I'm talking about. Because now what we're doing is we're focused on volume and efficiency, and that is the name of the game. And if you learn how to play that game and you control the money, you implement principle 1 of the bank, principle 2, and then we get into principle 3, which is cash flow. When you invest for cash flow. And the more cash flow you have, the more you can leverage that cash flow to create more of it. This is the compounding effect. We don't want to be thinking about compounding from a buy and hold accumulation perspective. We want to be thinking about compounding from a cash flow perspective. And here's why. I'm a big believer. The human brain is only going to allow you to put 100% of effort into something that you believe with 100% certainty you'll be successful with. And when you think about it from that perspective, when you look at it through that lens, you realize, oh my gosh, if you make $100,000 today and you implement the rule of 72 and you say, okay, inflation is at 4%. And now I go, okay, the rule of 72, 4%, I go 72 divided by 4 is 18. That means my money, my need, my quality of life, if I live on $100,000 of income this year, is gonna double every 18 years. That's what the rule of 72 does. So 18 years from now, I'm gonna need 200 grand. Maybe I'm 36 years out from retirement. That means I'm gonna need 400 grand because that 200 is gonna double to 400 in that time. So in 36 years, we go from needing $100,000 to $400,000. Now, then you take into account, you go, oh, the 4% rule. That's how much you can take out of a retirement income to be able to have this safe ability to withdraw that money. Now, if you need $400,000 a year, that tells me you're going to need $10 million in a retirement account. The human brain is not going to allow you to subconsciously do that because you're going to not believe you're going to be able to save $10 million if you're only earning $100,000 a year. The power of cash flow is if you're earning $100,000 a year, let's just bump you up to 120 and say you got to earn $10,000 a month. Okay, if I'm investing for cash flow and you go, all right, I need $10,000 a month, right? This you believe because $10,000 is a number that you can wrap your head around. $10,000 you've held in your hands, hopefully, right? Hopefully you've had $10,000 in your hand at some point in time and you've been able to do that and implement it in your life and you believe that and you go, okay, hey, if I know I need 10 million and this year I saved 10,000, holy crap, that's a big gap. I'm not gonna be able to get there. But if I have 10,000 per month that I need to get to and I chunk away in my first year, I'm able to create $300 per month in cash flow. Now I just chunked away 3% of what my total goal is. I'm on the way. And if next year I can get to 600 and then 900 and then maybe 1500, now it starts to compound and it starts to work for you. And this is how you can reach financial freedom in 10 years or less. And this is why I wrote my book. This is why we're doing what we're doing. Now, implementing these principles, I want to share kind of a story of two families that you've probably heard of, the Vanderbilts and the Rothschild family. I think both of these families have a lot of lore around their names and around their heritage and whatever. And I think it's important to understand that at the time, back in the day, Cornelius Vanderbilt was the richest man in history, okay? He was the richest man in history, and it wasn't even close. He died in 1887, and he left not one person a millionaire today, right? And I'm going to go into details about how this happened. Now, Mayer Amschel Rothschild was a banker. Here's the key. He was a banker. So do you think the guy understood money? He understood money. Now, he was a banker in the 1800s, right? 1812 he died in. And so 1700s and 1800s he was a banker in. And don't forget, in that time, like he understood how money worked. He understood the concepts of control. And he left a banking system for all his family. And here's the key. Once again, remember when we talk about infinite banking, we're not talking about it's just a product. Look at this. This is the rules. The rules in the system are the key for his family. And this is one of the things that I think is going to blow your mind. So Amschel Rothschild, while none of the Vanderbilts were millionaires when they had their family reunion in the early 1970s, remember, less than 100 years later, the family went from being the richest family in the world to not having a single millionaire in 1970. To this day, every single Rothschild is born a millionaire because of the way they do their banking system. Now, here's the deal. So this is why I think everybody needs to create their own private banking system. Because here's how you do it. First of all, you need to capitalize your bank. Then what happens is you take loans from the bank You take loans from your bank. You pay those loans back with interest the same way that you would pay back a bank if you took a loan from them, right? The cool thing is here is you get to determine the loan rate and the duration of that loan and the structure of that loan. You are in complete control. The bank is simply a holding tank for your money, your private bank. When I say your bank, I'm talking your private bank is your holding tank for your money. So how does it work? How does this app actually work? This is what we do. So this is, if we think about it, step one here is you capitalize your bank, right? And then as you capitalize your bank, so sometimes I'm a big believer in the phrase, we need to slow down to go fast a lot of times, right? So when I say that, we got to slow down to go fast. What I'm talking about is you got to be able to save before you invest, right? So when you save before investing, this is what you do. You go slow because sometimes the hardest part of this, I'm going to tell you right now, the hardest part is capitalizing your bank to a point where you can deploy that money and get that money into velocity. But if it's worth doing poorly until you're good at it. If it's worth doing, it's worth going slow so you can then go fast later, right? And so what we do here is we talk about, okay, we finally capitalized our bank. That's the hardest part, but we got it done. Then what you're going to do is you're going to borrow against the bank value. You're going to have your money in an account. You're going to be in complete control of it. You're going to borrow against that bank. You're never going to take the money from your own bank. You're going to do what banks do, and you're going to leverage it, and you're going to earn money on that money. And so it's going to go. And then what you're going to do is you're going to set up those loans, and you're going to pay the loans back with interest. And then what happens, as you can see here, is that as you pay it back, you're not paying back a bank. You're paying back an insurance company because you're borrowing against it. You're never taking the money out of it, but you're basically effectively paying back your own banking system, right? In doing so. And that money goes back in, and you do it once, and then you repeat the cycle, and you do it twice, and then you do it 3 times, and then you do it 4 times. And this becomes a cyclical nation. And what happens is the velocity of money, the more you do it, the faster it goes because of compounding. You've seen hockey stick growth in compounding of interest. It goes like that, right? Well, this is the slow part. This is the capitalization phase, right? And then you can start to deploy the money, right? The money gets deployed. And then you do that a couple times, and then boom, you start actually getting a lot of velocity. And that's where things really take off. And that's where the opportunity really happens. You can't do that with traditional investing methodologies. You have to be in control, and you have to invest for cash flow. That way you can actually get to the number that you can control. The other thing I didn't say about the cash flow that's important to understand is that $10,000, that's what you need today from an inflation perspective. By investing for cash flow and doing this, you actually control more of the variables, and you have more clarity about what your needs are to actually achieve this freedom number that you're after, right? To be able to reach your goals of being financially free, because that number is going to change year in, year out, and you're going to be able to evaluate exactly where you stand. You're going to know what you need to do. So that's really important to say. Now, private banking system, here's the deal. You can take loans for all these different things: automobiles, houses, colleges, vacations, all these different things. Now, I want to say this. A lot of people out there are talking about how to buy cars and get rich. A lot of people are talking about you can get rich taking vacations and all these different things. I got news for you. You're not going to get rich buying any of those things. However, I am a believer that if you are going to buy a car, which my guess is if you're watching this, you're probably going to own a car if you don't already. You probably want to get nicer and nicer cars, and you're probably going to buy those cars anyway. You're probably going to take vacations. You're probably going to buy houses. My question to you is not, do you want to buy them or not? Because my guess is you do. If you're going to buy them, do you want to do it in the most efficient way possible or not? That's the real question. So if I could show you how to take, this liability that you're going to buy no matter what, and rather than giving the bank all your money, you recapture that money and have an extra couple $100,000 at retirement simply in the way you buy your cars because you put yourself in being the position of the bank. How appealing would that be to you? That is what we're talking about here, right? So what you should do, remember what you should do. Now, once again, you can do this on some of these things that you're going to buy anyway. It's kind of like a credit card. If you're going to utilize a credit card responsibly and use it for the points, and you're going to pay it off every month, and you're going to put your mortgage and your groceries and travel and stuff and gas and stuff that you were going to spend money on anyway, use a credit card, get the points, pay the credit card every month. That's a responsible way to do. So if you're going to use it responsibly. So if you're going to spend this stuff, use the policy, use your banking system for it responsibly. However, here's what you should do. You should utilize it if you want to get faster results to buy cash flow creating assets. And that's where it gets really fun. So what are cash flow hacking assets, right? So you got apartments, you got farmland, oil wells, businesses, high risk lending. So this is going to be like hard money, business lending. Let's just call it private money, right? This is where you can find opportunity and people will seek you out. The more money you have, the more capital you have, the more opportunity will seek you out. That's an absolute principle. Investment properties, cash flow, single family home, Airbnb, anything of that nature. We are right now doing properties in the Dominican Republic. Think about that. We're doing properties in the Dominican Republic because of the fact that we have access to capital. You can't get traditional financing on the properties that we're doing, and we're only able to do it because we have our own system going and doing it. Now, commercial development, right? Commercial developments are awesome. Fix and flip houses, collectibles, cars, cards, whatever you're into, art, whatever. Collectibles are an awesome thing. Now, question is, I'm a big believer in, like, I don't care about what the product is. I care about the attributes of the product. And I think because a lot of times people get like wrapped up emotionally in like what's going on because the marketing around certain products, I think people get wrapped up emotionally about product names and whatnot. So what I want to talk about is like, I don't care about what the product is. I care about what you want your money to do for you. What attributes are you looking for in your money? And so my question is, would you like your money safe? Would you like it to be highly liquid? Would you like no penalties to access your money? Remember, when you have a 401k, you have a 10% penalty in a 401k, right? And that's horrible to me. Would you like tax advantages, i.e., would you like it to grow tax-free? Would you like to have tax-free access? Would you like guaranteed growth? You don't get that in any investment. And would you like to not be impacted by the stock market, i.e., stock market declines and stock market volatility? Would you like to not be impacted by that? To me, those are all things that I'm looking to do. And so why I think it's so important, I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse, but I really, like, this is just the process that I went down 8 years ago when I first started realizing, like, oh my gosh, this is the way to go. When you understand that you need this for your own banking system, you understand that it's going to help you create wealth and it's going to help you fight inflation and it's going to help you understand and how to measure both of these things at the same time. And when you can measure this and when you believe in it and you know what you're doing, you're operating more intentionally. That's why I created Life 180, living intentionally for excellence, leading into financial excellence, LAFE, both ways. And if we know that we live in the greatest, most prosperous country in the history of the world, yet only 5 out of 100 people are able to maintain their standard of living when they retire, to me, that's a problem. So I call this, if you do this, I call this the retirement rescue plan. And the reason I call it that is because most people, because they're behind the 8 ball, they get to 50, 55 years old and they feel like they have no hope. And if you don't believe in it, you're not going to go for it. And then you lose your dignity and it becomes stressful. And I think that leads to a lot of illness and challenges in relationships and marriages and you become a burden on your kids and nobody wants that. And so I'm telling you, anybody can do this in 10 to 15 years. If you do what I'm talking about, yeah, you're going to have this fear of missing out because you're going to have to go slow to go fast. But that's what I was talking about before on the compounding. And if you understand that, man, is it powerful. You could tell I get jacked up about this stuff. And so anyway, all right. So one of the things that I say all the time, and this is become one of my favorite mental processes to go through is your money in alignment with your values and your beliefs? I think this is a huge exercise for you to go through. Because remember, when it comes down to the human brain is only going to allow you to put effort into something you believe with 100% certainty you'll be successful with. So the question is, what do you believe, right? What do you believe? Where do you stand? This is why I'm not a believer in anybody that says there's only one way to do anything. I'll tell you that straight up. That's why I don't like Dave Ramsey, because he's like hardcore one way. That's why I don't like a lot of infinite banking people, is because they say this is the only way to do it. I'm going to tell you right now, this may not be the right fit for you. You may not be the right person to do this, right? Because control, you can't calculate the rate of return and the value of control of money, right? Like me having access to $1 million of liquid capital is going to have a different value and a different rate of return associated with it than somebody else who doesn't have the level of knowledge and skill set that I have and the network that I have, right? And so for you, That's a question. And so what I have to ask is where are your values? Where are your beliefs? What do you believe? And what are you doing with your money? Is it in alignment with it? So from that perspective, I ask you, what do you believe about national debt? Do you think it's going to go up or down? Are you worried? We're $31 trillion in debt right now. 31 trillion. What do you believe? Are you worried about that? What do you believe about inflation? With inflation going up, what's that doing about interest rates, right? So interest rates are going up. How does that impact the national debt? What does that do to our tax base? What do you believe about this? How are you worried about or are you not worried at all? Do you just have this, ostrich burying his head in the sand kind of mindset where you think it'll all just work out magically somehow? We're $150 plus trillion of unfunded liabilities. So when you look at this, I'm not telling you this is right or wrong for you. My question to you is, where is your money now? What are your beliefs around this? And is your money in alignment with this? Because if I'm gonna tell you, if you have your money in a 401k, an IRA, or any qualified plan, 401ks, IRAs, 457s, 403bs, TSP accounts, if you're a government employee, any of that stuff, if you have any of that, I'm gonna tell you right now, your money, if you're worried about this, is out of alignment. Because if you have your money here, I'm telling you, you're in business with the government, and they can tax that money away from you at any point in time, and it is pretty scary. So here's the deal. This is why when we focus on building our financial foundation, this is why we focus very, very heavily on utilizing mutually held life insurance companies, okay? This is why we do it, because it's gonna protect you against inflation. A lot of people have the misnomer, life insurance is an investment. No, it's not, it's an asset. Life insurance companies do one thing better than any other financial institution. They've done it for 180 years, and that is protect the purchasing power of your money for the safe money you need. The FDIC, if you're gonna keep your money in a bank, is massively underinsured, right? So they got bailed out in 2008 and 9. What's gonna happen next time? Nobody knows. The life insurance companies that we work have paid dividends every single year for 180 years. Okay, let me emphasize the gravity of that statement. Think about it. 180 years ago was 3 different versions of the dollar, right? In 1840, when mutual companies began, it was pre-Civil War. There was a version of the dollar that existed. Then we went through the Civil War. After that, we had another dollar. And then the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 led to another dollar. During those times, these companies never missed paying a dividend. They always pivoted to whatever the right opportunity was. Because I know a lot of people right now are worried about the world's reserve currency status and what's going to happen with, there's a lot of fringe people out there that, I have comment on my videos all the time. That is something I believe that mutually held life insurance companies have been doing this for 180 years. And so I'm going to trust them to manage that risk. I'm going to trust them to manage my purchasing power better than a bank would, and certainly better than I'm going to be able to do it, right? Like, so that's just it. And so when I look at that, that's kind of how I make my decisions. Life insurance companies had no bailouts, and they were the best performers in the last financial crisis, and they're going to continue to be because of the way that they do their business, right? So here's why we utilize life insurance companies from a banking perspective, right? We're talking about 4.5% long-term growth. Remember, when we're looking at inflation, 4.5% is going to beat the inflation. Remember, this is not the investment. This is just your banking alternative that you borrow against to go invest in other things. My buddy Caleb Williams wrote the and asset, and that's it was really equated to that. And I'm telling you right now, this is a huge concept that most people don't understand. If you can keep your safe money earning that, it allows you to focus more on the volume conversation that I was talking about before, rather than taking a small percentage of your income and taking a lot of risk with it. It's highly liquid. A lot of people think that whole life insurance is illiquid, that it takes 10 or 15 years to be able to have access to the cash value. I'm going to show you you can have access to that money in the first year. In fact, you can have it in the first 30 days. If you do it the right way, right? So for real estate investors, for entrepreneurs, for anybody that's looking to literally leverage this money quickly, this is the way to go at it. Penalty free. You don't have to pay a penalty to access your money like you do in a 401k. So having it for a business account, reserve account, emergency fund, medical reserve account, or what I call just an opportunity fund to be prepared for the cyclical nature of the markets, right? We're going into what I believe is going to be a recession next year. That's going to be a down cycle. I'm a huge believer right now. You got anywhere from 3 to 18 months to get your financial house in order to take advantage of what I believe is going to be the best opportunity that we will probably ever see the rest of our lives if you are anywhere near my age, right? So tax benefits, you get huge tax advantages because, once again, instead of putting your money into a 401k where the government controls your money, you have your money in an account where you've already paid the taxes, and it's going to grow tax deferred, tax free. It's going to grow tax free, and you're going to be able to access it on a tax free basis through policy loans, right? And there's all sorts of different ways and strategies. I'm not going to get into the details on how we can do it, but it's huge it's huge how that can work, right? So my question to you is, once again, I'm not saying this is for everybody. You can tell I'm fired up about this, and like the reason I am is because I believe emphatically taxes are going up, right? That's just my belief. That's why I do this, because I want to make sure my money is in alignment with my values and beliefs, right? And so that's why I believe if you believe taxes are level, they're going to go down, if you're like whatever, then I'm going to tell you this. I still think there are ways you could use this, but philosophically, this probably isn't the right fit for you, right? So when you utilize whole life as your foundational asset in your life, you're not going to be impacted by the stock market. It is bubble proof. It is proven to be bubble proof time and time and time and time and time again, bubble after bubble after bubble for 180 years. You can eliminate Wall Street corruption from your life. You can have more control over your own money, like we said, and you can take advantage of the market cycles. Warren Buffett once famously said, people can make a decent amount of money during a bull run, but people can make a fortune in a bear market, right? And this is the market cycle comment. This is why when I'm talking about being an opportunistic investor, having an opportunity fund, I'm talking about taking advantage of these market cycles and making a fortune in a bear market. Because think about it, when 95% of people are struggling, it's the 5% that are prepared that can take advantage of all the opportunity that exists. Now, at the end of the day, I had a mentor, one of my first mentors, told me, Chris, if you want to be successful, find people that have the life that you want, emulate what they do until you get there. And so this is where I kind of came up with the idea of like, hey, I just want to do what the wealthy do. Now, I hate these little the clickbaity like things in regards to that. But the bottom line is banks and corporations right here are the number one holders of whole life insurance in the world. It's not a coincidence. They use it as capital reserve accounts. They use it as a tier one asset on the balance sheets of banks. Corporations use it for their corporate pension plans. They guarantee the money. They have a lot of their corporate reserves in those accounts. A guy named Barry Dyke wrote a book called The Pirates of Manhattan. It's a phenomenal book. It goes through all of this stuff on a really, really deep level. If you're a nerd about this stuff like me, it's a great book to read. Congressmen and women in that book, Barry Dyke found 54 congressmen and women that utilize it. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke utilizes life insurance companies to help him with his money. And cash flow investors, this is the thing. A lot of people go, well, how come I haven't heard about this before? Because you're following the traditional methodology, even if you're wildly successful, even if you made a ton of money, I have a lot of people that are in that camp and they finally kind of get introduced to this concept and they're like, why haven't I heard of this before? It's because you probably haven't had a focus of cash flow investing to this level. Or if you have, you just haven't sought this out. But I promise you, if you look, you don't have to look very hard. You find people that have done this and done this wildly successfully. There's stories in the past. I'm not going to get into it because I don't like all the hype that goes around it. And I think it's a lot of misrepresentation of how they actually utilized it in their life. But there are people out there, the Rockefellers, Walt Disney, J.C. Penney, people, Ray Kroc, people like that leveraged whole life insurance. It's crazy. Walt Disney was once quoted basically saying that Disneyland would not exist had it not been for the fact that he had a whole life insurance policy and was able to do what we're talking to start it. And so when you understand these things and you see the impact and you really do the history, you understand looking at the people that are investing in them. I want to have my money where the elite people are. If I want to get really extreme, let me go back really quick. If I wanted to get really extreme about this, about some of the fringy people talking about worried about the devaluation of the currency and stuff like that, I want to have my money where these guys have it, right? The congressmen and women, the Fed chair people, the banks and corporations. I want to keep my money here, right? Why? Because even if we do have all these monetary policy issues, right? if we know that this is where they keep their money, that's going to be the safest money in the world, right? Like, so you put your money in a bank puts your money here, right? Like that, to me, it just becomes common sense, right? It's part of a common sense process. Even if it's only a part of what you're doing, to me, that is a big thing. So rules to set up your private bank. You only want to work with a mutual company, right? That's a big thing. You only want to work with a mutual company. You only want to work with a company that's 100 plus years old. You only want to work with a company that's never missed a dividend. That's a big thing. And you only want to work with a trained expert. This is a big thing. Now, I'm not saying it has to be us, but I will say this. There's a lot of people out there that work for companies that don't focus on this. And quite frankly, life insurance companies do not want you focused on this. They don't train you on this because there's less profit in it for the life insurance company. There's some companies that are much more friendly with this infinite banking concept, the banking policy concept, and there are certain companies that are less friendly. Every one of the companies is contractually obligated to hold true to the contractual obligations that the policies provide from a benefit perspective for the policy holders, but not all policies are designed the same. And so working with a trained expert where this is all they do, once again, it doesn't have to be us. I would say make sure you're working with people that are passionate about it, that do nothing but this, that are serving people, and that can serve you through the life of the policy. I think that's a really, really big thing. So some misconceptions I want to share before we get out of this is that I think a lot of people think of the actual policy as an investment. And this is where I think it's not an investment. It's a banking alternative. This is where your safe, liquid, accessible capital that you want to grow and have access to on a guaranteed basis is going to be saved. The investment is when you borrow against it. If you go back to the graph that I went through when I kind of sketched it out, the investment is when you borrow against it and you take the risk outside of the policy. You never want to take risk inside of the policy or even view that as a risk or as an investment. A lot of people think any agent can do it. A lot of agents will say, oh, I've heard of infinite banking. I can do that. Let me make up a policy for you. If I could tell you how many horror stories I see for illustrations of people that email me stuff, your head would explode. And it's really, really sad a lot of times because sometimes they get 2-3 years in, or sometimes they're 7-8 months in, and they've wasted literally thousands and thousands of dollars on premium payments only to realize that they have nothing to show for it. And the policy was improperly designed and they got to start over and they got basically burned that money on fire. So you want to make sure you work with an agent that knows what they're doing. And lastly, you cannot utilize indexed universal life. A lot of people believe that you can. I have a whole playlist on my YouTube channel talking about indexed universal life and how it works. And I've got a lot of videos that talk about why, in a very detailed basis, you cannot utilize infinite banking with indexed universal life philosophically and fundamentally. Now, once again, I'm a big believer. You want to align your money with your values and beliefs. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So what I did is I put together 10 beliefs that I have, that our agents have, that the people in the Life 180 community have, right? And once again, this just comes down to it. I believe money should be in alignment with your values and beliefs. I've said that a lot in this presentation, right? I believe you need to do the personal work so your business and money will work. That's a big thing. I believe that math and money are different. I believe your financial strategy should always produce progress towards the life that you want to live. Let that set in. Your financial strategy should always produce progress towards the life that you want to live. Is what you're doing that. I believe that we have a responsibility to be better so we can serve better. I believe that the best investment that you're ever going to make is in yourself. It's one of the things I love this when you invest in things that are in alignment with your values and beliefs. You are where you are in life because of who you are in life, and this is going to force you to become more so you can accomplish more and live that life that you want. And it's going to help you invest in yourself, and you're going to take a different level of responsibility that's going to get you where you want to go on a more predictable basis. I believe that no financial product will solve your problems, even whole life insurance. I don't think it's going to solve your problems. It comes back to who are you going to become. It's going to be a good foundation for you, but it's only going to be as good as you allow yourself to grow, right? I believe that personal, start that part over, Mikhail. I believe personal finances shouldn't be complicated. I believe if it's worth doing poorly until you're good at it. This is my favorite thing. There's nothing more worth it than what we're doing, what I'm talking about right here. I truly believe that in my heart. That's why I'm doing this video. That's why I do what I do. That's why I create the content that I do. I did this for 6 years just out of kind of like my pay it forward mentality, unable to do anything about it, unable to like sell anybody anything because I believe in this stuff so much. And finally, I believe if we don't sell whole life insurance, right? What we sell here at Life 180 is the ability to break through change, right? You are where you are. I'm going to end with this in life because of who you are in life, right? And I believe that. I believe that you hopefully have somewhere that you want to go, something that you want to achieve. And, you know, if you're looking at setting up a call with one of our agents, if you're looking at getting on a call with somebody that I've worked with and mentored and trained and that, you know, I collaborate with, and, you know, anybody that you talk to here, if you're watching this video and you go to them, they have access to our full team, our full system, our full support. They have my stamp of approval, right? And I don't give that out lightly. So my belief is you're here for a reason and that you have something that you want to accomplish. And my guess is you're probably not where you need to be or who you need to be to get to where you want to be, right? And so with that, what I love about this is the only financial strategy in the world that's going to help you and encourage you and support you to become who you need to be to get to where you want to go. Nothing else in life is going to do that. Nothing. No other financial product in the world. Remember, it goes back to my 4Fs: faith, family, finances, fitness, and finances, right? You can't get better in your faith by having your pastor read the Bible. You're not going to be a better husband having your best friend try to be a better husband for you. You're not going to be a better father outsourcing that to somebody else. Your fitness, you can't get your personal trainer to work out for you. Why would we think we can have somebody else manage our money for us better, right? If financial stress is the greatest leader of health issues and disease, if financial stress is the greatest cause of divorce, the way I look at it is by doing this, it's going to help you become more. It's going to have such a positive impact on all the other areas of your life. I don't want to preach at you, but I think it's really important for you to understand why I do what I do. I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this for just selling a concept and whatever, because I'm going to tell you right now, this is only as good as you're going to make it. But if it's worth doing poorly until you're good at it. And I can promise you, taking a step in a direction and making incremental changes on a day in, day out, month in, month out, week in, week out, year in, year out basis you're gonna look back, and people way overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. And I'm here to tell you that if you just get on a path and you implement and are willing to go slow to go fast, you could get so much further in 10 years than you ever dreamed. And that's I believe that in the bottom of my heart. So that is like, yeah, I don't need to go through all this. That is why I started Life 180. That is why I do what I do. So hopefully you found this presentation valuable. I put a lot of time. I try to take a fraction of all the different things I've learned, all the different kind of components and elements of this that drive me and my why and why I do what I do, because this is the culture that we have here. This is the thing we do with Life 180. I have no interest in just being a life insurance agency selling and pushing insurance. I want every agent on this team to be solving problems, right? And really, this is only good as your ability to identify what your challenges are. And if this helps solve some of them based on some of the information that I've shared with you, be excited to meet you and have a conversation with you. And I know somebody on the team is going to be able to help you. So anyway, hope you have a blessed, inspirational day. Hope you found value in this. I look forward to you setting up a call in the link below, and we'll talk soon. Take care.